Welcome to From Heartache to Healing and Hope with your host, Bernadette Winters Bell, LMSW. This podcast explores the many layers of life through the lens of loss and grief, often with special guests who share their perspectives on this universal yet unique process. These explorations can offer you, the listener, avenues to encourage you to have these conversations with yourself, your family, your community, your world.
Welcome. I'm Bernadette Winters Bell, your host of From Heartache to Healing and Hope. And in my podcast, this first series called Same Storm, Different Boat, well, this interview I think many people are going to relate to. This is Ben Riker, and he does work within New York State to help people in sustained recovery. And many organizations look to his organization to be able to get resources and areas of support. He's a man personally and professionally that knows so much about recovery and how it's been during this pandemic. I'm so hopeful this will help so many people. Come, join me soon. Take care. Welcome. I'm Bernadette Winters Bell, and this is my podcast, From Heartache to Healing and Hope. And in this series, Same Storm, Different Boats, I would love to welcome in Ben Riker. Welcome, Ben.
Hi, Bernadette. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. So I know you have a very interesting background. Would you be so kind as to introduce yourself to my audience?
Sure. Well, first and foremost, my name is Ben Riker, and I am a person in long-term sustained recovery from both substance use and mental health disorders. Um, my background, I guess, is most recently is I'm a certified recovery peer advocate in the state of New York, as well as a New York certified peer specialist, which is a more on the mental health and substance use side of things. I'm currently employed as the statewide recovery youth recovery program coordinator for Friends of Recovery New York, and we're based out of Albany, but we do cover kind of everywhere. And in a nutshell, that's
Everywhere in New York State?
correct. Yep.
Now, I guess, well, I'll ask the question. I learned that after World War One, people would ask one another, "How was your war?" because they didn't have the communication and social media contacts and resources we do. So, in your your professional life, how has your pandemic been, Ben?
So the way that my organization currently operates is we are really a support organization. We don't work on the ground one-on-one with individuals who are struggling. So we advocate for other organizations. We advocate for um, causes. We advocate. We're located in Albany because that's where the governing happens here in New York. So we are really an organizational entity. We bring other organizations who have very similar missions and visions together around the state. So my pandemic has been from my living room. We've been working remotely since March, and it's been a lot. It's been big time adjustments. As a person in recovery, there was a lot of things that I learned in very early recovery on, coping mechanisms and a lot of things that I haven't really had to lean on for a long time. And I find myself, opening my toolbox and looking for those skills that I developed years ago as a person in early
It's
recovery.
funny. I talk about with my clients about grief, and I say I'm going to give you a coping toolbox. Of course, it's going to be virtual, and you can make it what you want. It could be wood or fabric or whatever, but you have to have more than just a screwdriver, so to speak, in that coping. Because if you were in the kitchen and only had one tool, you couldn't make many things. Right. So you had to go into your coping toolbox and dust some of them off and bring them
Yeah,
out. Wow.
absolutely. I mean, some really, really simple things that I wasn't doing.
Right.
Just taking a few minutes every morning and centering myself,
Right.
breathing. I find my job now. I have a lot of responsibility. I came from a local organization, Friends of Recovery Delaware Otsego,
Right.
where I was working on the ground. I was working in the emergency department and in the shelter, and working with people in crisis every day, where I found myself, needing to center myself, to take a breath, to
Mhm.
make sure that my self care regimen was in order, and coming to where I've been here for a year or so, I've set some of those things aside. I'm in an administrative supervisory role, and you know, uh, while I have a lot of meetings, I'm not dealing with either myself in crisis or anyone else in crisis on a daily basis. Yeah, pulling some of those tools back out, and making, reestablishing those habits that help me in both, my substance use disorder and with my mental health, reestablishing some of those things. And I have to say, it's been um, a good thing. You don't realize how far away you get from those things that are important until you go to, kind of draw on them again. So it's that piece of it has been pretty rewarding.
That's, I talk about in the grief work that I do, the gifts of the dying or the gifts of the grieving. But I've also been talking to people about the gifts of the pandemic. Now, I don't speak about that with everyone because not everyone has felt so many gifts.
Sure.
But even for you to say, no, this caused me to open this box up, blow some of the dust off of it, and say, oh, yes, these are good, useful tools that help my mind reset. Because when you're
Yeah.
doing the breathing, as you well know, when you take even just 3 slow, deep breaths, literally, neurologically, your mind begins to go to a reset. Right, right.
Absolutely.
And not is not right.
Absolutely.
But something as simple as that, but that if we draw upon it and use it, it can be oh so helpful. Well, that's pretty inspirational, for other people who are working from home, and
Yeah.
looks like a lovely living room. And I'm happy for you because you've spent so many months there.
Well, I'll tell you, I had my office, in back in March. My kids use my office for crafts, and it's full of camping gear and all this stuff. And I sort of spent some time making a nice work from home area, and did all of these things. And about 3 months ago, I found myself right back on the couch, laptop on the coffee table. Like, I'm not gonna fake it. This is,
Right.
um, but
Long
yeah.
as you wear pants to the Zoom interview, you're all set there.
I I do I put pants on every day. Yeah.
That's always that's always a good thing. Wow. And so, um, have you found that the people that you're working with and having meetings with, that how has it affected them, the pandemic and the work that they're doing?
So a lot of our advocacy work is with local organizations. We have a lot of Friends of Recovery kind of chapters around the state that are all independent nonprofits. Um, Generally, they operate recovery community and outreach centers, and we have one here in Oneonta and one in Delhi that Friends of Recovery Delaware Otsego operates. And for those people, there is a lot of pain right now. There's a lot of people are struggling. My for New York really advocates for the peer role, for that certified recovery peer advocate role, that recovery coach role. It's the value of lived experience helping someone else. Um, and there's now, as of 2020, there's the Office of Alcoholism and Substance Abuse Services, which is now, thanks to our advocacy, the Office of Addiction Services and Supports. We got rid of that abuse word that we don't like to use, but we they now have a mandate that all outpatient clinics in the state employ peer advocates and provide peer services. So we do a lot of trainings around supervision, around what is the role of a peer in these clinical settings, et cetera, et cetera. But a lot of the community-based organizations that we work with on a daily basis, you know, their staffs are generally people who are in long-term recovery or who are in early recovery.
Mhm.
You know, some folks could be really great at their job, but still be struggling. You know, so not only are the communities struggling that these organizations are in, but the individuals who are running and working in these organizations, um, you know, really need a lot of support too. So we've been, you know, just really advocating for organizational wellness within these different organizations. We've been advocating for support from lawmakers for funding, which is right now is really hard to come by
Yeah.
across the board. Oasis services are looking at about a 20%. We're calling it a withhold, but it's a cut. Um,
It's like the schools in many other places.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And, you know, we're seeing recurrence among staff actually really spike, folks that are working as peers who may have had, you know, 5 years, 10 years of sustained abstinence, finding themselves having recurrences. Of course, overdose rates in New York are going to show that they've, you know, we made some really amazing gains between 2017 and 2020, 2019. 2020 is looking just tragic as we start seeing those numbers. So it's been, you know, it's been a year to forget. I was going to say a year to remember, but I think it's a year to forget. It's a,
Maybe it's both.
yeah, yeah, you know,
Because of course, if we remember, we improve upon it, hopefully, you know. I was thinking
yeah.
prior to starting our interview that until recently, at least in my mind, we hadn't heard a lot about. I heard that the numbers were going up for sure for use of substances um, in a way that people could find harmful. But it's only recently you're starting to see stories about that more than just a blip on the night news. And I thought, well, between the politics and Black Lives Matters and the pandemic, I guess there wasn't that much airtime left over, you know?
Yeah,
And I
absolutely.
was thinking about how um, frustrating, maybe it's not even a strong enough word, that people would feel working at your level, working one-on-one, being a person having the difficulty, that your situation is not being highlighted, is not being acknowledged. And you know, 2 years ago there was more talk about it, and the numbers are going up. Absolutely, yeah, that makes it terribly difficult, I would imagine.
It's important to remember that we were in the midst of a pandemic.
Right.
Before this pandemic started, we lost 71,000 people in 2017 to overdose. And like these deaths are largely preventable, I think, with good policy. Those overdose deaths are largely preventable with good policy as well. Um, so yeah, you know, I don't like to like create competition among needs, right?
Yeah, my pandemic's bigger than yours. Yes, absolutely.
Exactly,
Right,
right. You know, there's tragedy all over, and
right.
I don't think that there's more weight in one place than another. One um, area deserves more weight than another. It's all, you know, it's all really
So
heavy stuff.
absolutely. And if you're already dealing with substance and or mental health issues, let's say, which often can, um,
Certainly overlap.
I was going to say coexist, and that wasn't right. Overlap, yes. Um, Already the sense of anxiety can go right up really quickly with
Undoubtedly.
right, with the news of the pandemic, and these many people died, and these many people are hospitalized, and these many people have the virus now, and what we're doing about it or not doing about it, and Black Lives Matters, and the politicians, and that's just like the top three, you know,
Yeah.
and people's level of anxiety um, for me is equal to what anxiety they had before, what levels they were working with, what coping skills are in their toolbox,
Sure.
right? how much of the news they're watching and how the
Certainly.
right and how they're able to access support at a time like this, because when you go to the hospital, people aren't saying, are you having a substance issue? No, no, you got a temperature? You got a cough? At the
Yeah, of
door in an emergency room, they're waiting for you there with those questions. Right.
course.
Wow.
And we know, uh, one of the really the cores of the cause of addiction for so many people is trauma, and
Mhm.
the loss, even in our local community where we are in New York, is um, so many. I've experienced so much loss, whether it be to overdose or suicide,
Mhm.
or car accidents related to alcohol. But then to put the loss uh, around COVID on top of that, is it's it really is, it's a lot. And you talk about our anxiety levels, and I find myself, I think that I take pretty good care of myself, and I still find myself struggling with my sleep, waking up with that dread. um, and for people that have never struggled with that, I think as far as my own addiction went, that was a major, 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 since I was a tiny little child, that fear and anxiety and all of these things. But for people who have had a kind of quote unquote, um, you know, healthy mental health, who are just now starting to experience that stuff, it's really difficult. On the flip side of that, I think what we're doing now, this platform that we're able to communicate virtually, is amazing. And to watch mutual aid groups adapt almost overnight, our Alcoholics Anonymous communities, and Narcotics Anonymous communities, and smart recovery communities, and harm reduction communities, um, almost within a matter of weeks, adapt that way. And my pathway to recovery included 12-step fellowship, and I'm able to go on meetings with people who are in California and Alaska and France, and it's been really great. But at the same time, in our rural communities, access to technology is not always,
Not a given that you have that.
is
That's
not a
right.
given. And so we see some socioeconomic impact around that stuff, for those people that are now disconnected, that we're going to in-person meetings and things like that. And
Exactly. Well, if you're in a household with, say, yourself and three other people, maybe a spouse, two children, maybe others, and you have Wi-Fi, but it can get wonky.
sure.
We are in rural upstate New York. If all four people need to get on it for work, for meetings, for school, um, you know, there isn't always success for all four people that the Wi-Fi will sustain those kinds of things.
Sure.
Absolutely. So
Yeah,
that's something else on top of it.
yeah, and then on top of that is the question of creating a private space to,
Mhm.
whether it's meeting with your therapist or meeting with your mutual aid group, finding that physical private space in order to be able to comfortably share what's going on without kind of advertising to the household your personal stuff.
Well, I can tell you that I know on the news shows, they've seen a lot of kitchens where people are interviewed. However, what I've seen kitchens, I've seen more bathrooms and bedrooms,
Sure.
something with a door.
Yeah,
um, and that's what the space says to me when I see it. Oh, they've gone to a place they feel that is safe.
absolutely.
Absolutely. Those are all changes. Um, do you think that, or have you experienced during this time about the youth? And they have been um, more availing themselves of coping skills, maybe not so healthy.
So it's amazing. I actually have a 12-year-old son and a 5-year-old daughter. I had a lot of anxiety and fear around, you know, last year school basically went kaput. It went virtual um, late in the school year. And I had a lot of things that my daughter hadn't started kindergarten yet. My son was in 6th grade. And it was amazing watching how simply he adapted.
Mhm.
Um, you know, he certainly can't manage his own schedule yet. That's like it's just not going to happen. So um, it was really amazing watching, that resilience with them. Um, Even my daughter, who's now in kindergarten, my son actually got COVID. Uh, he
Mm.
was diagnosed. Nobody else got it. He was quarantined for 2 weeks. Um, but the resilience with uh, the support from the school system, even his little sister, that going from that fear, oh my God, I've been hearing about this virus, is Jonah going to be okay, to overnight kind of being like, oh yeah, he's got the virus, he's going to be fine. You know what I mean? So,
Especially at 5, when people are talking about a virus, which could be what? Is a
right,
virus something that lives
right.
near Santa Claus at the North Pole? Like, it's not really a concrete thing for a lot of
Yeah,
us, you know?
yeah, absolutely. But watching their resilience has been heartening. It's been really, really amazing. Um, that being said, from the substance use community, I mean, I'm the youth recovery program coordinator, which from where we sort of look at youth is maybe 12 to 30. It's youth, young adult. And, that, I guess, in that population, I think there's some pretty significant struggles. But again, I think so much of that goes back to socioeconomics, it goes back to race, it goes back to um, access,
Mhm.
equity, equitable access. Um, so, while I'm able to provide, luckily, thankfully, I'm able to provide um, healthy home for my kids. That's not the case with everybody. We have people in the restaurant industry
Oh,
who were comfortable who are no longer comfortable. We have people in all kinds of, you know, um, yeah. I think I have a lot of gratitude around the fact that I haven't been economically impacted like a lot of families have. So we are seeing stories about youth who basically school systems have lost. Uh, they don't have access to the technology, so they're losing this year of their life, and schools provide a lot of important things, food.
well, yes, because some of them that, um, maybe that they depended on the school for at least 2 meals,
Of course, yeah,
and also for structure and guidance, which may or may not have been present in the household that they live. And
absolutely,
then there's, of course, the students who this venue of Zoom or Skype or doesn't work, you
yeah,
know? They need to be in that energy and feel it. For some students, I know it's been a blessing because for those that don't want too much socialization or stimulus or sensory overload, this has been
sure.
great. But there's the others that haven't. Have you seen the numbers of substance abuse? Oh, I'm sorry. That's an old word. Substance, what do I say now?
Substance use disorder, yeah. I mean, so I do a lot of work around language. I recognize the clinical language around substance abuse versus substance use. So that's one of those words that we're growing out of, I think.
I'll grow with you. I'm
Yeah,
all
is
with you,
it
bro. Okay. So have you seen more youth or young adults use substances in this time? Have you seen those numbers go up?
we honestly just don't have data, and actually at the moment right now, m- my team is developing a statewide survey for youth, that'll go out. We're trying to have it go out to all school districts in the state. Whether we get the AOK to go ahead and do that is another thing. But we'll be looking. If we're hoping to launch February 1st, and we'll have some data to start analyzing. We're hoping in 90 days. Um, to start taking a look at it, and it's as much for us, we try to help identify need, right?
Sure.
Identify gaps in services, gaps in need, And then we send that data back to the state, and we send that to our local nonprofits and our human services organizations and say, look, this is both for youth and young adults, and then for New York on the adult side. But, we try to say, look, we have 10,000 responses, and, this need, transportation, right? Housing, what is it? And we develop a policy statement around the results of that data collection, that we hope our policymakers look at and heed. But so we don't know right now. We're in this place. We're throwing, as far as our programming goes and the programming we're encouraging our partnering organizations, in all honesty, we're throwing spaghetti at the wall.
Against the wall and see what
And
sticks.
and when we find something that sticks, we really try to build on that. But we know we're missing things. The core of this peer-to-peer work, really the basis for it is being person-centered, allowing the individual to identify their need rather than me defining the need for someone else. And so that's what this data collection is about. It's about me not making an observation and trying, I can make an observation and say, oh, I think housing is the number one need in Otsego County. The reality may look something completely different when we actually speak to individuals who are
Well,
struggling.
that's what good research is not deciding ahead of time that housing will be. You might think something and then learn something else as
Exactly.
you go. Good data research, absolutely.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I think that as you were talking before, I was thinking about all the different aspects and resources pivoted, went online, as opposed to a meeting. Red Door, is that the
Red
the old
Door
term?
Church.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And
Yeah.
so if someone is listening to this, and I know a lot of people are, where would you direct them for online resources?
So locally, in our area, Friends of Recovery Delaware at Otsego has mountains and mountains of resources, both within their walls and around the rest of the community, for both Otsego and Delaware County. Statewide, I would encourage people to visit our website, Friends of Recovery New York website. We link to every recovery community and outreach center
Wow. So that
around.
was, why don't you say that again a little slower? The one you work for.
I work for Friends of Recovery New York. It's 4-ny.org. And we
Okay.
have a statewide resources page, and we provide links to treatment, to recovery, post-treatment recovery support services. Really, you name it. We have a really easy to navigate
Oh, no,
setup.
that's key.
And a lot of this stuff we were talking a little bit about. That the services being person-centered and goal-oriented, and it always amazed me when I was working as a peer professional in the emergency department, in the shelter, and out of Friends of Recovery Delaware Otsego's recovery center, those needs that people actually did identify if you let them, as what's going to support your recovery. I had a woman who was in her mid 50s. She had been considered herself to have a substance use disorder since she was, in her very early teens. Um, when I asked her on day one, what do you feel like you need to sustain your recovery? She wanted to learn how to read. She wanted to be able to read a book to her grandchildren.
Mm.
And, that's something that I would never identify, but she carried her whole life so much shame around that, and so much, shame and embarrassment around that it really fed her addiction. And we were able to link her up with literacy volunteers of Otsego County. And, this was a couple of years ago, and she's, now a couple of years in sustained recovery. And that was one of those things, and the other thing that surprised me was dental health.
Mm.
What do you need to feel like, to sustain your own recovery here in early recovery? And it's like, I can't get a job because I'm afraid to smile. People think I'm a jerk because I don't smile. I can't get a job because I'm, and that, when we let people identify what those needs actually are, it's really, really amazing. and it makes so much sense when they start talking about those needs and why. Those are things that I never need in early recovery. I needed, first of all, I needed mental health care. That was something that I needed. um, so I identified this need for some clinical services when I was finding abstinence. um,
Right,
and other things are, some people don't want to be abstinent, and their recovery doesn't include a goal of abstinence. Their
right.
recovery includes a pathway of harm reduction. How every Sunday I drink 2 dozen beers, and we have domestic violence problems in my house, and I lose jobs on Mondays, and I can't, how do I help that person drink 6 beers on Sunday instead of 24? Right. So when we let that person-centered work, it's really at like the core of what we advocate for.
Just absolutely amazing when we allow people, like you say, to tell us what they need, because it not only says what's foremost, not in their mind and their heart, but like you said, you use the phrase feeds their addiction. And so I think of these issues as holes in our heart, that were created. And if we're filling the hole in our heart, and the hole is created by a trauma of some sort, and we're filling it with caretaking, drugs, exercise, we can
Sure.
name a number of things.
Absolutely.
And as we all know, putting more in doesn't take care of the hole in the heart. But if we say, oh, what do you think caused the hole in your heart? Well, my mother always said I was not so pretty. And so now I have all these teeth missing and I can't get a job. Well, that frames who they think of themselves as. So not
Absolutely.
only feeding the addiction, from my perspective, it's not allowing what's in the hole in the heart to come out, the toxicity. And they don't even have a chance of moving forward if that isn't addressed, you know?
For sure. Yeah.
Absolutely. Wow. So let me ask you a question. Um, with all of the work that you've done, and in this unbelievable time in our history, in our family, our community, our country, our world, what gives you hope?
Well, again, I'm a dad, and um, seeing the goodness in my kids gives me hope. I mean, my daughter will never see me uh, use substances, right? My son, when he was very little, certainly did. But seeing his goodness and kindness, and like uh, that reinforces my hope, every day. They're just such great little human beings, and it gives me confidence that I'm doing something right.
Excellent.
um, so that's amazing. And then looking at the tireless work of so many people around the state, it's tireless and it's thankless, around substance use, around mental health, around
Mhm.
social inequities. Um, you know, I tend to bombard myself with cable news, right? With internet news. I'm a bit of a political junkie. And junkie is another word we don't like to use, by the way, but I do. I identify certainly as a politics junkie, and um, there is a lot of uh, it's. I think we're in a place right now where it's safe to hate. It's there's no shame around expressing your prejudices. We've lost any sense of shame around um, a lot of things that you wouldn't have said out in the open are okay to say right now. So when I see people rallying against that stuff, when I see people standing up for goodness, when I see people being brave. I know, we're in a rural community, which in and of itself doesn't necessarily mean an ignorant community, but there is a prevalence um, of fear of the unknown and fear of the unlike, dissimilarities. So when I see people, when I know that, somebody posts something on social media that's very courageous, gives me tons of hope. When somebody says something publicly and takes a stand publicly from a position of courage, it gives me a lot of hope. I think there is more goodness in the world than evil.
Well,
Uh,
evil gets more playtime.
but evil is louder, and evil gets
Yes.
more playtime, right? And it's so those public displays of courage, I think, are really empowering. They make me more courageous in my own life. um, so I would say that's where the hope lies right now.
Love it. Wonderful. Because that's something that I believe will inspire my audience, and you and others can carry that forward. That's not a short-term hope. I love it. Well, I want to thank you so much, Ben, for joining me today on Same Storm, Different Boats, here on the podcast, From Heartache to Healing and Hope. It's been very enlightening to learn about what's being done and to give me hope and my audience for the people here in New York State. So we say thank you. And thanks again for joining me.
Thank you, Bernadette. It was absolute pleasure.
Thank you.